If you ever come down to the Bay Area, Santa Clara, you sign autographs, you will not even go up there. Yeah. Photographs.
I've never been able to win some.
Right. I don't know what it is. Probably somewhere else. I'm not sure it is. I'm sure it's important.
Yeah,
We're extremely well. I'm very confused as to what we're saying.
You know, I have a photograph of Randy Johnson.
It is okay.
His last game he ever played was
Okay.
and he hurt his arm back. So that was the last time he ever batted. And I have pictures of him pitching. Yeah, I've got some pictures. Last game.
When it's in microphone too, keep this one dying.
We're in your chamber.
Yeah, sure. Welcome to everybody. It's great to see you. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And Wendy, thank you for being here as well. So we're just, we're gonna give you kind of an update of what's going on at the county level and city level, and then most importantly, allow time for questions and answers. So Wendy, did you wanna start?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Wendy Rudacchio. I'm your District 4 County Supervisor. And District 4 of the county is a portion of our county that includes Seaside, Marina, South Salinas, Del Oaks, Sand City, East Garrison, CSUOB. We've got 5 incorporated cities within the boundaries of the county portion that I represent. So we just make the rounds. We do this every year. We do a series of town halls. This year we decided to do our town hall in partnership with our mayors, because I think one of the values that we really try to embody as taking office is finding ways to collaborate and look for the things where we have agreement, and then work on those issues so that we have we're getting good things done for the community. So in that vein, we'll share a little bit of information. We just I think our 5th town hall that we've done with our mayors. So I'm really glad to be here in Del Oaks, and it's been really great working with the mayor. So just a quick overview of the county, because a lot of folks really don't know what a county does or is. Sorry, we do have interpretation here with us today. If anyone needs Spanish interpretation, we got, tell me your name again. Right in the room. So please just let us know. Thank you, Gary. And also I'll just introduce, we've got Quinn and Alex here from the county providing us with IT support. So thank you guys for being here. Okay, so County Monterey is a subdivision of the state. There's 58 counties in the state, and really a lot of times the state says we want to do some service, we want to have jails, we want to have public defenders, we want to have Medi-Cal, and so they give that mandate or they give that responsibility to the counties. And the counties, by and large, are doing the work that the state or federal government tell us. Do it this way with this money, and exactly how we want you to do it. So a good portion of what we're doing is what the state tells us to do. So Monterey County is a fairly large county, geographically wise, but we're right in the middle of about 450,000 residents. A couple things about Monterey County that I think are interesting. We're an incredibly wealthy county, but we're also a county with a pretty significant poverty. So overall, our median household income is below the statewide average. Our poverty level is higher than the statewide average. And we have a great wealth and great need that exists here in partnership with one another. Agriculture and tourism are the 2 big sort of economic drivers that we try to balance. And then District 4 is every county in the state has 5 elected supervisors, with the exception of San Francisco. They're special. So in Monterey County, we have 5 supervisors. I'm your District 4 supervisor. And my district includes 5 incorporated cities within the 11 incorporated areas. The County of Monterey has about a $2 billion budget. Like I said, most of those dollars, about 2/3 of those dollars, are pass-through monies that the state or the federal government assign to the county with very specific requirements about what we do with those dollars and how we spend those dollars. Between about 26 different departments, including things like the Monterey County Elections Department that oversees all of our elections in accordance with state and federal guidelines. Public Works and Facilities manages all of our unincorporated county roads and bridges. We have Department of Emergency Management, so when there's evacuations or fires or floods or any other number of emergency situations that come up, the county works with all of our city partners to manage those things. 911 calls all go through the county, one distribution center. The county, they all go through the county system and then get distributed out. Our library system, the Seaside Library, the Marina Library, the county library. And then unique in Monterey County, we have a county hospital, it's Spadina Medical Center. We're one of the few counties left that have a county hospital. And we also run a whole series of county health clinics for our Medi-Cal population. Monterey County has a fairly significant, much higher than other counties, number of residents who are low income, therefore qualify for Medi-Cal. So delivery of health and social services is a significant responsibility that the county has, especially in incorporated cities. where you've got all of your city services that are also being provided. And the District 4 office, so each of the 5 supervisors were up at the top of their District 4. For me, this is a full-time position. You elected me, and I have a full-time job with the county, and we have an office of 3 people. We have 2 office locations, one in Marina and one in Salinas, but we spend most of our time out in the community. So you're welcome to stop by the office anytime. No guarantee that someone's going to be there. We're usually out in community meetings. Eric Morris, my policy analyst. Yuri Anderson is my chief of staff, and Kamar Davis is our administrative management professional in the office. So if you contact us for anything, Kamar's probably going to respond and make sure we get answers for your questions. So it's an honor to serve Delray Oaks. It's an honor to work with all of our local electeds and pass the floor every day.
It's an honor to have you here. Okay, so I know the majority of the time I would like to spend on hearing from you, question and answers, but there were a few things that I wanted to touch on, and you'll see them listed up there on the slide. The first one's teamwork, and I talked a little bit about this at the Fall Festival when we had the 70-year anniversary celebration. I just feel really good that the community and the council are working really, really well together. And also up at the county level, Wendy, you and your staff are absolutely fantastic, making sure that information gets down to us, and whenever we need help, you're always there to help. And we spend time on updates, so to make sure that we understand what's happening. Well, I understand what's happening at the county level, and also articulating some of my concerns or issues to Wendy during our update. So it's just been fantastic teamwork across the board. Okay, FORTAG is here. We had our 100% design review that happened here in City Hall, and some of you might have participated in that. And Tansy took a lot of those suggestions and implemented those into the plan. Right now, we're at the stage of beginning the utility work. You probably see it across the street from the frog pond. They're relocating all the utilities underneath Highway 218. And now it becomes a situation where we want to keep you informed as construction begins, because it's going to be about a 2-year process, starting in spring of this coming year and ending in spring of 2026. South Boundary Road, as you know, if you've ever traveled on it, there are safety concerns there. There's no question, particularly at that intersection of General Jim Boulevard. So we're going to upgrade that. It will also have the infrastructure to our Fort Ord property, so that'll be critical for that. The next step in that process is to get the design plans done and the EIR completed to upgrade that road. We have about $8 million that was given to us before the Fort Ord reuse agency ceased to exist. It's not going to be enough, so we're going to have to rely on grants and other ways to pay for it, but at least that'll get us started. The Surplus Land Act is relatively new to the state, and it requires at the state level that if a city is going to sell or develop a property, it has to be advertised. And we did that with 2 locations. The first one is the area across from the Oaks condominiums. People refer to it as 17 acres property. For that, we had 2 agencies come back that showed interest. That was the Monterey Parks Department and also Big Sur Land Trust. What we've done as a council is we've created last month an ad hoc committee that will consist of 2 council members that are available to talk with the Parks District if that's something that they want to do. So we're prepared to do that. The other location is our Fort Ord property. 2 agencies also came through on that. That was Big Sur Land Trust and a housing development company called City Ventures. So those 2 expressed interest. And one of the things that I would like to see going forward is that we hold a workshop so folks are aware of the steps we've completed so far and what we have to do going into the future, where we can bring the community together, make sure that folks are educated on it and get the input before we go to the next step. And then lastly, our short-term rentals. We recently passed an ordinance that capped the number of short-term rentals in the city, the ones that are unhosted, at 25. And I think that provides a really good balance between quality of life issues and the revenue that we get from the transient occupancy tax. Going forward, some of the things that we might look at is maybe hiring a firm for enforcement so that we don't have to spend staff time researching to see if folks are adhering to all the regulations, and potentially look at the transient occupancy tax rate. Right now, Delray Oaks has the lowest on the peninsula at 10%. Most cities are around 12%. One city is at 14%. So that might be something that we can take a look at. If so, it would have to go on a ballot measure. So something down the road potentially to look at. And that's it.
All right.
That's what I wanted to share.
And I will just say that many of these same issues kind of overlap with things the county is working on. But because we're in an incorporated city, you all have local control over issues like short-term rentals. The county is struggling mightily with the issue and trying to figure out how we can get an ordinance in place that allows for something enforceable. And then FORTAG, we've got a number of FORTAG funded sections that are all moving forward sort of throughout the system and network. One that's exciting is out over by East Garrison to connect East Garrison into the university. So we've got that funded and in the works as well. So the FORTAG project is, I think, one of those really big visionary things that when all the pieces at some point come together, it's going to be great, but there's going to be it's going to be a little bit of work before we get there. So I think one of the things I wanted to talk about too is just to highlight there are a number of regional bodies that I sit on, that the mayor sits on, that your council members sit on, that make decisions for the region as a whole. LAFCO of Monterey County is one. The most significant decision that's come out of LAFCO in the last year was around a request from the water district to have permission to proceed with the buyout of Calium for water supplier. That vote is being challenged in court right now. So these are big sort of decisions that affect big systems that we care about. So I sit on LAFCO currently. Are you no? Okay, so the mayors appoint someone to LAFCO. So it's possible that your mayor at some point could get appointed to that. Monterey One Water is our wastewater management treatment district that's leading sort of in some pretty awesome ways with the reuse of water, so the water treatment to recycle it back into productive use. We all sit on these regional spaces. The Transportation Agency for Monterey County is another one where we get quite a bit of state and federal dollars to implement regional transportation infrastructure projects. So if you drive to Salinas through Marina, through MGM Road, there's a big $44 million project that Marina is leading on, but that funding through TMZ has made possible. And then Regen is our local landfill. I sit on the Regen board with council member Shirley, like with somebody, and a whole bunch of, so city reps sort of are appointed to all of these different things. So I guess my point is, like, we spend a lot of time in meetings.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm on 3 of those. So I'm the representative for the Monterey One Water, Community Energy, and TAMSI. So yeah, it definitely takes a lot of time.
Yeah, so it's not just so your city council members aren't just attending city council meetings, they're also in all of these other regional decision-making spaces, making decisions that affect Delray Oaks, of course, but also sort of touch everywhere around. And so a lot of times I think one of the things that it's important that we have open dialogue and regular communication is that, you know, if I'm sitting in a space where we're going to be making decisions, I want to make sure that I know how it impacts the cities that I represent. And that if there's issues from the cities that I need to bring back into those spaces, that I know what those issues are. So yeah, just wanted to highlight some of that. There's two other big projects that I'm working on in the district, not necessarily in Delray Oaks, but that I wanted to share. The most significant one being in Seaside, on the corner of Broadway and Noche Buena. If you've ever needed to apply for public assistance, so if you've ever needed to apply for Medi-Cal or food stamps, we had custody of my cousin 10 years ago, and I spent a day sitting in the lobby of this office trying to get her Medi-Cal switched over so we could get her into the doctor to get, anyway, a number of things taken care of. This building was built in the early 70s, and it's in no condition to serve the needs of our community currently. We have about 62 county employees who work at this location every day, and this location serves, I believe it's right around 100,000 residents on an annual basis. We also have a need in Seaside to relocate the library. The city of Seaside has a need for that location. So we've kind of been looking around trying to figure out where can we put all these pieces together. And so this was a project that we identified, and we have successfully secured $3 million of county funds to begin work on the design and environmental assessment for what's possible with a redesign of services on this city block in Seaside that the county owns. And, the mayor and I talked about, all of the social services that the county provides. Delray Oaks is a very unique community, and you don't have a lot of, you don't have a lot of children on Medi-Cal here in Delray Oaks. You don't have the levels of poverty that we see in some of your neighboring communities. And so these projects are critically important. In Monterey County, half of our kids are on Medi-Cal. 70% of the babies born in Monterey County are to a mother on Medi-Cal. Food assistance is a critical way that many families in our community feed their children and their loved ones. And so I think it's important that we highlight and recognize the significance of services like this and programs and dignified places for people to receive the support that they need, even though it doesn't necessarily have as direct an impact on Delray Oaks residents. It's here, and these services are taking care of our neighbors. So stay tuned for that. We've got a lot of work ahead to figure out how to get this fully funded. We're looking at somewhere around a $70 to $100 million project once we go through all of the environmental work. But yeah, let's see. I think, did I mention? Yeah, so we've got 124,000 families in Monterey County who are supported by public assistance. And this is the location that serves all of those families from the peninsula. Then we've got other slides on here for our redevelopment costs. And then the other project that we don't have a slide for, but that I'll just briefly mention, and we are also moving forward with, the county provides health clinics for all of our Medi-Cal members, which our prenatal care is provided through Medi-Cal. We just got a new Seaside Health Clinic rebuilt in the last 10 years, and now we're working on rebuilding the Marina Health Clinic. So that'll be another fairly significant $50 to $70 million project, but we'll be able to triple the number of Medi-Cal patients who are able to be seen in Marina, which gets us closer to serving the total need, not quite there, but we picked up $1.5 million for that project this last year, and we will be able to fund that through federal reimbursement moving forward. So that project is also moving forward. And then other issues and things, and I think we'll wrap up and go to questions, but I did want to just mention housing has been a pretty common question and topic that we've received at all of our other town halls. So if you're following the housing issue, most of our jurisdictions are currently working on their housing element, which is the document that says how you're going to plan for additional housing needs in your community. In the past, the state puts out this thing called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Number, and they say, Monterey County, you need to, build an additional 30,000 homes or 7,000 low-income homes. Put a plan together and send it to us. So communities would put the plan together, send it to the state. They'd say, yep, we received your plan, and that plan would go in a pile. Because of the housing crisis that we're in now, the state is saying we're going to take a really close look at what you're putting forward, and we're going to make sure that it's actionable, and then we're going to hold you accountable in ways that are to be determined and are being determined for achieving or not achieving those housing numbers that we've laid out, which is really challenging because local governments, like, you're not a developer, I'm not a contractor, but our planning so these planning documents are what we're required to be working on right now. The unincorporated portion of the county has a arena of 3,326 additional new units. Where we put those, how we get them built, lots of questions and challenges. Where do we have water for these? Where do we have infrastructure? What kinds of associated services are needed when you talk about 1,000 very low income housing units? Delray Oaks has 184, and I think you have.
Right, we have an additional 86 from the previous cycle, so they added on to that. So we have a total of 270 is the number of houses that we're required to build in Delray Oaks. 270. So to that number you see up there, the 184, 86 are from a previous cycle that will carry over to make the 270.
What land would you use?
Right now, we've identified the Fort Ord property as where our housing will go.
So it's going to be a challenge for all. It's going to be a challenge for Delray Oaks. It is absolutely going to be a challenge for the County of Monterey. All of the cities who we're working with, Seaside needs to add an additional 616 units. And part of the challenge is when you talk about, we say, Delray Oaks needs to add 60 very low income housing units. The way you get a very low housing unit is typically by having market rate housing that subsidizes. So it's not just the 60 very low income, it's the 5 of market rate that you need for to subsidize every one affordable, rough numbers, right? So it's how do you pay for the 60? How do you create a policy that allows for there to be subsidy for the units that are necessary? So we could talk about housing all day long too, but I just wanted to open the conversation. And then homelessness is the other issue that has come up for almost every other town hall that we've had. And talking to the mayor, it's not as much of an issue. Delray Oaks doesn't experience the visible homeless encampments that some of our other district areas do. But that's something that I will say the county has doubled down their investment in. And we are one of the only regions, I know it doesn't feel this way, but if you look at the numbers and the data, we're one of the only regions that's actively reducing statistically the number of unhoused people in our region, whereas other communities are seeing double-digit increases to their homeless counts. Monterey County, we are successfully moving our unhoused residents into permanent shelter. So we're doing it successfully. It's not enough and it's not fast enough. And some of the challenges that we have around us, like Pajaro, are creating significant numbers of people who remain unhoused. But we are committed to working with all of our city partners to figure out how to get the shelters that we need opened and to get the additional supportive housing built as quickly as possible to get folks into shelter. So with that, we can, I think, open it up to questions or discussion.
Okay, so Mike.
I just got a couple of really quick questions. Forgive my ignorance on this, but when you talk about low income housing, I really thought that was a state mandated issue. How is the county involved? Is it actually overseeing it for the state? Is that what it's working?
So the state gets to tell and for most of what the county does, we're only doing it because the state or federal government tells us that we must do it, and we must do it in a certain way, and we must do it with the money that's being provided. The affordable.
Telling you, the county, to tell the city.
In this case, the state is also directly telling. Well, the state is telling a group called AMBAG, one of those regional bodies that I mentioned, the Association of Monterey Bay Government Area Governments, something. Who's your rep on AMBAG? Do you?
Is it John?
John. Okay, John. You is the rep. So Delray Oaks has a representative who sits on this regional body. So the state tells AMBAG this region needs to come up with what is that? 33,274 additional housing units. The AMBAG group sits around a table and says, how do we distribute out those unit counts to cities? And then they tell each city effectively what their responsibility is. The county receives the number the same way that the city receives the number, and then we each interact directly with state housing and community development for the development of our plans. our plan, the county's plan, will go to state HCD the same way that Delray Oaks' plan will go straight to HCD.
The state just basically hands it right off to you.
The state is giving us directives. And with new legislation, the state is now saying, not only do you have to submit this plan to us, we're gonna review this plan and make sure that when you show us a map and you say, oh, we're gonna put additional affordable housing on this spot on the map, that spot on the map can't be like a pond. They're saying like, is this realistic? Or like we're gonna build all of our additional affordable housing on the highway intersection. Like you can't, you used to be able to get away with that. You can't get away with that anymore because there were communities intentionally saying this is where affordable housing is allowed. It's only allowed in places that could never get built. So now the state is saying, no, you have to show us a real plan that could actually happen. And then new legislation is coming in and saying, and if you don't do it, we're gonna penalize you this way, or we're gonna penalize you that way. We don't know what other legislation could happen in the next 2 years for additional penalties or hammers on the side of the state.
So my other question was, forgive me again for my ignorance
Yeah.
on this, but Medi-Cal, I was assuming that was state too, but that's actually county?
So it's state Medi-Cal, so it's actually federal Medicaid, and the federal government assigns sort of certain requirements to states. The states then administer eligibility for Medi-Cal. In California, we call it Medi-Cal. And the state doesn't have its own eligibility system. They assign that all to the counties. So the county acts sort of as a proxy of the state to say, do you qualify? Show me all your documentation. So county employees are the ones that collect all the information, review all the information, submit it back to the state, and then make sure that you get your card. Once you have your card, then you can use that card to receive your Medi-Cal, doctor from wherever. But what we experienced years ago was that there were no doctors that took the Medi-Cal card. So then the county further stepped in and said, okay, there's a federal program that lets a county operate a health clinic. So we opened a whole series. We've got, I think, I don't know how many, maybe a dozen health clinics throughout the county that are county doctors, county buildings, but it's a health clinic. It's called a FQH, Federally Qualified Health Clinic. So we get a special kind of funding from the federal government to be able to accept Medi-Cal cards and provide Medi-Cal services.
Natividad is part of it.
And Natividad is a little bit separate from that, but Natividad accepts anyone regardless of their payer status. So primarily the patient mix of Natividad ends up being significant. I think we just looked at the numbers, around 50% Medi-Cal compared to CHOMP, which would be 20% Medi-Cal. Rough numbers.
This is for Scott and yourself, and Kim back here and Jeremy. How in the world do you guys sleep? I mean, you've got so many things going on. You actually sleep?
I would say we do that during meetings, but no.
Scott!
We don't want to go there.
No. Was that recorded?
And those are great. I mean, those are really good questions, and they're questions that I think most people don't ever need to ask. I often say, like, if you don't need to know how the county works, like, it's probably better for you because it means you're not in the criminal justice system. You're not needing public benefits or assistance. Use the library. That's great. That's a great way to interact with the county. But a lot of the things the county is providing for are things that really are those sort of wraparound safety nets that exist.
You mentioned Seaside Library may be moved. Will it be in Seaside as well?
That Broadway and Noche Buena building site is what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one question, actually two questions. One is the water system. We were, Scott knows we are thinking about bridge club and building a bridge club. We found quite a lot of properties available in Seaside and Marina, but every time we said, they said we don't have water rights. How does one go about that getting water rights? Probably there are a lot of empty lots that they don't have the water rights. Are we doing anything with getting more water to these lots?
You want me to?
I mean, I can take, so let me go So I was going through, this is a tangential story. I was going through some boxes of my grandparents from before I was like boxes of their stuff. And I found a pine cone, Carmel pine cone article, front page. And it had a full page picture of my grandpa and Sam Farr's dad. So this is going way back, right? And they're like this, like yelling and screaming about water on the Monterey Peninsula. So for context, the water issue is a multi-generational issue. And if I were to sit here and tell you that we've got a solution and we're just gonna like make it happen, right, Scott? That would be delusional thing to say. But I will say, I think that there are some water solutions that are out there. The one that's farthest ahead in the process. So take another step back. So the Carmel River was being used to supply water for most of the peninsula until there was an overuse of that water, and a cease and desist order from the state said to Cal-Am, you can't keep pumping water from the Carmel River. So Cal-Am began looking at alternative sources of water to be available to meet the needs of the growing peninsula. For many years, I think there was a contingent of individuals who really wanted to not see any additional growth or development in this area. And so they were able to point to the limit of water, and say, we don't have any water, see, we can't grow. That's why. I do think that that reality has changed, and I've spent a lot of time out talking to community. I think by and large, most people agree we need a reliable, sustainable source of water for the future. How we get to that water solution is a little more challenging. So right now, Cal-Am has a desalinization proposal that's in process, being contested. It will be most recently approved by the California Coastal Commission with 20 conditions. If you ask me, I think that those 20 conditions are probably not, the Coastal Commission did a disservice to our region by saying we approve this with conditions that aren't ever going to be met, because it gave people hope that this project was viable. I would like for us to see a return to the original conversation that had been in place prior to the Cal-Am's desal project, of a regional desal project that could be publicly owned. I think we do need additional water supply. I think the question is, what is the path of least resistance that's going to get us to an actual water supply at the end of the day? And that is up for debate. But do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so until that cease and desist order is lifted, those lots aren't going to have any water assigned to them. So that's the key. And at a certain point, the agencies will go back to the state and ask for that cease and desist order to be lifted based on those additional sources of water that Wendy was talking about. So they make a determination based on that, but until that happens, those lots will, by law, will not be able to have any water on them.
There is the Monterey One Water, which was listed as one of the regional bodies. We picked up a $77 million EPA grant to allow us to move forward with the Pure Water Monterey expansion project. That's going to add a significant amount of water supply into the Cal-Am water system, which maybe, in fact, we're hoping is enough to raise that cease and desist order. There is disagreement, widespread disagreement about how much additional water we need and how much water that will provide for our current needs or for additional development needs. I'll also mention that Monterey County is very unique in that we exist on a water system separate from the state. So most of the rest of the state is on a statewide sort of shared water system. Monterey County is completely an island of our own when it comes to water supply. So the Salinas River, the Carmel Rivershed, those supply our water for this region. The basins that exist, the aquifers that exist in Monterey County are some of those that have been identified as being
Deep aquifer, ancient.
They're out of sustainment. They're Seaside Basin is adjudicated. Overdrafted. Thank you. I was like, there's a word.
Sounds like
overdrafted. So our basins are all overdrafted. So that where we do get water from underground, the Salinas Valley and Basin is overdrafted. And so we're under a state order through the Groundwater Sustainability Agency to create some solutions to bring that into not overdraft sustainability. That discussion is taking place at this Salinas Valley Groundwater Authority, and it's highly political. And those who have water rights and access to water currently don't want to give those up. And those who don't, it depends where you are sort of in that basin. The Salinas River actually flows north, which is an interesting direction for a river to flow, but it flows north. So those growers and those landowners who are closest to sort of Lake Nacimiento, where the source of the Salinas Valley, they've got plenty of water for their land and their wells. As the river flows towards the ocean, you have aquifers and wells that are getting a seawater intrusion, and farms that don't have access to fresh water anymore. So we're watching that seawater intrusion move upward. But the question, I think it boils down to who pays for solutions. Do we have everyone pay equally? And who benefits from the water that's generated? Should the growers and the property owners who don't have a need for, like who have plenty of water because they're at the top of the watershed, should they be paying the same amount as those at the bottom of the watershed? There's just a lot of water rights issues at play and a lot of questions about who pays and who benefits. And then on top of that, there's a thinking that water from the Salinas Valley watershed belongs to the Salinas Valley property owners and growers, and that water shouldn't be ever allowed to find its way into the peninsula supply. So when you start talking about water recycling projects, there's a worry that water, to fill the water recycling projects on the Monterey Peninsula could come from water that's available from the Salinas Valley, but does the Salinas Valley then lose the rights to that water in the future? So there's, I probably have way oversimplified that, but I think it's complicated. Seems like what?
The gray water?
We do have a purple pipe system for ag in the CSIP that is used for ag. There's quite a bit of that. And I think there's the groundwater, so at this point, the Groundwater Sustainability Agency is tasked with saying, they've had to research, here's a bunch of solutions that are available to them, and they now have to identify which of those solutions are they as a community willing to invest in and move forward with. Super oversimplified. So yeah.
And yet, here we are in the Alvarado.
Here we are.
And we have the problems and the challenge of that road out there.
218.
And the general board going out towards Marina. And looking at Marina, let's just assume you take the vehicle already from Marina. You go up 14,000 feet, right in the middle of the university. You look up and you see there's REI and everything else, other stuff, shopping center, and they're building these homes. And at the same time, we have a 2-lane road at 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock at night. It's bumper to bumper, you can walk on top of it. And here we are, we have to, okay, we happen to be a nice little village over here. We'd like to take more advantage of it. You see, it's kind of what you can do, it's more a dream. So what happens to this district? And all that data is going over there to the right of the part of that is part of our property, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you go up General Jim Moore Boulevard and take a right on South Boundary Road, exactly on the right-hand side, the Parks District owns a parcel there. On the left side, the Native Plant Society, there you go. Okay. Yeah. The other direction. Yeah. Okay, so you'll see, General Jim Moore Boulevard going up to the north, and you see the bright red square there. That is the Native Plant Society parcel. Below it in the green is the Monterey Regional Parks District parcel. And then you'll see the kind of lighter red next to that green, that square there. We own that and everything across the street in the red. No, go. So, yeah, let me
We need a little.
Point it out. Okay, so this right here is the Native Plant Society parcel, Parks District. We own this, and this is the 17-acre property across from the owners. So it's these parcels, we own them. Partially here, it's not shown on this map, but if you cross it right here, that area has been sold to an individual, as well as this part down here has been sold. So those folks down here, actually, you might have heard a while back about an RV park. Well, that's where that has been approved to be placed, in that lower area. And it's already owned by an individual who would love to do that if they had the infrastructure out there to do it. So that's what our property situation looks like out there. But until we get the infrastructure to those areas, it's like you just described. It's just land waiting to be used.
Do they have water right here?
We have water, that's correct. And it's provided by Marina Coast Water District, as opposed to Cal-Am.
Frog pond, how are we doing that?
The frog pond is,
And the area above it, to the right.
yes, that's owned by both of those parcels. So you see where the green, the darker green is there, that's the frog pond parcel, and next to it, the lighter green is the one I just described.
Both of these are owned by the Parks District. Potentially, whatever they want to do with it. That is so precious. Once we lose that, this is a heck of a lot of the spirit that we're still able.
Well, the Regional Parks District is its own special district.
Yes.
With its own taxation authority. And so the city doesn't actually, in the county, it's separate from the county, separate from the city. It has its own elected board, its own funding. And so I think, well, they work with the city, but it's their land.
Yes, they work.
To learn big neighbors.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's their jurisdiction. We help out. It's a, a good neighbor type of situation where we'll help them out if for example, in the frog pond, police are needed out there. We will go out and provide police. Maintenance in some cases, we'll help out with that. We recently had fire fuel reduction in there, and that was several agencies coming in working together to make that happen. So that's kind of how we work on that good neighbor concept.
And the Regional Park District, I love the Regional Park District, but they include, we're sort of on the northern side of their boundaries. Marina is, I think, the northernmost side. And we've been trying to encourage and remind them that, they collect a bunch of tax revenue and they need to keep investing it in the northern part of the district. They've got a lot of land in the southern part of the district in Carmel Valley, where there already is a lot of open space. But I think your point that the open space that their Parks District provides is golden, valuable open space for our community. I live in Marina, and our access to the library in Marina is past Loch Padden Park, and it is the most accessible open space that we have to my home. And so being able to walk through that space and see that space and have connection to that space is really, really precious. So I'm grateful to the Parks District for their investments, but I want to see them have more parkland for our residents to the north.
For 8 years, I was wanted to be pet resident of the Oak. And and one of the reasons that I really enjoyed working with it is that when you drive in both in Middle Moore,
when you see our development, it's almost like you see something go up. It's almost like you see a very distinct thing, and that's part of the gallery art. Because we are,
Yeah,
and that's a positive.
yeah.
This may be a fancy question, but opening General Moore really messed up the traffic going through Del Rey. Is there, and I think, tell me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of it is people from Salinas using us to get through to General Moore and vice versa. Is there any sort of a plan further up to put a road through so people can cross over without coming down to Canyon Del Rey?
No, I don't know of any project that's out there that would cross over that Fort Ord property.
No, and I'll add, I think, you know, Seaside is experiencing the same challenges if you're ever on Monterey Road. The intersection right next to Costco when you get off of the freeway, and there's like 5 different, there's Monterey Road, there's, I don't even remember all the names of the roads, but they all intersect Fremont, Del Monte, like it all comes together. There is very, very preliminary. I think TMZ has done some thinking about what can be done at that intersection to kind of, but we're not even at a point where that's on the list of like short-term projects. To be like super honest, I think the fact that we've developed as a region car-centrically and with the need for additional housing and additional people, I think that we're probably headed into a reality where traffic is only going to get worse. Highway 68, there's some planning that's been done, extensive planning that's been done to add, to figure out how do we alleviate traffic on Highway 68. Best case scenario, the one that we ended up landing on, which is the roundabout solution, it's like, if I could show a map, so like if you look at the future, they're like traffic goes like this, you know, from here we're here, and they look into the future, they're like traffic is increasing if we do nothing. But even if we successfully do the whole roundabout thing, it's like traffic only increases, like it's still increasing. It's not making it any better. It's making it better than it would have been. But that's hard to accept as a resident who's sitting in traffic, who's like, I thought this was going to make it better. Well, no, it's like just relatively making it better than the worser was going to be. And I think a lot of the traffic issues that we're looking at are that reality. In Monterey Salinas Transit, which is our bus authority, they're fully funded for the SURF bus line, which will go through Marina, bypass Highway 1, which you drive that, you're sitting in traffic for an hour in the morning into Monterey. Bypass that along the old railroad to get into ultimately, I hope it's into Monterey, but into at least Sand City to start with. You know, that project, a lot of folks are like, I'm never going to take the bus, and I'm like, well, it may not be about me today. It may be about my son or even my grandkids someday, because I don't know that it's possible for us with the design that we have in our community to continue to be as car-centric as we are if we're going to keep adding people into our area. I don't know what the solution looks like, but I know that we're not alone in struggling to figure out what it is. I think that's another one of the reasons why the FORTAG concept or vision provides another sort of option. Like, what does the future look like that maybe isn't as reliant on cars? I don't know if we...
More housing here so that all the people that are a lot of our workers don't have to drive to Soledad or Gonzales or wherever on to work.
And
part of it is
yes,
that's where they have to go until they can afford.
Yes.
More affordable housing here. They're not on 68 feet. So I mean it's all tied together.
It's all connected. Monterey doubles in size during the day. The number of workers who go into Monterey to work literally doubles the size of Monterey every day. But when we talk about, you know, where's Monterey gonna put all of its affordable housing, they're also talking about Fort Ord properties. So you're still talking about funneling people in and out of places where the jobs are. So I think it's, I think it's something, I try to be really honest and like not set anyone up for hopeful outcomes that we don't have a path to achieve. But I will say that the conversation is real and it happens every meeting at TMZ. It happens every meeting at AMBAG. It happens at the region, at the landfill. We're constantly talking about, you know, what does the future look like? How do we make sure, to the degree that we have technology to plan for waste in the future, what are we doing now to try to set that up to be successful? But yeah, keep asking the question.
All that land south of the airport, we're going to
South of it, do you have the other map? Does that include the airport on there?
up the hill. Towards your Gatsby and
On the other side of 68?
yeah, and Mulholland on the other side, they're all acres on the.
I don't know. Do you know which property that is? Is it a private owner? I don't know who owns that. Yeah.
I think the diocese used some part of it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think MPUSD owns some of it. I think the county owns some property over there. Again, the water issue is a big one. Yeah. What other questions do we have? We've talked about transportation. We've talked about housing. What else should we delve into?
Getting back to water.
Yeah, water.
So, I mean, this is an easy question. But we have the ability now to build ADU units on our property. And with that comes water rights for that unit, correct?
No.
Oh, it doesn't.
No, so what happens is,
Yeah.
your house is allocated a certain number of water credits, and that's all you're gonna get. The folks that are able to put ADUs on their property are able to do it by finding savings with the water credits they have now. For example, if you have a 1.6 gallon toilet and you convert it over to a 0.8, you gain a credit, for example. And you want to get rid of a bathtub and put a shower there, you gain a credit there. So you do that through the savings, and if you accumulate enough of that to put a shower, a sink in an ADU, then you can do it. But it's very difficult because you're trying to find every spot you can to get those water credits that are finite, and you know it can be too tough for some houses. Yeah.
I was gonna sign a waiver and just put a second bathroom.
Now, there's another thing that's available out there. If you have one bathroom in your house, you can get what they call the second bathroom protocol, where the district, the water district, will allow you to put a second bathroom in. So they will give you the credits for that. So that's kind of another little part of it.
And that's for those, and all of Delray Oaks, right, is within the water management district?
Yeah,
boundary?
within whatever the district manages, they have the second bathroom protocol
Okay.
that is allowable.
So when you
Yeah.
move towards Seaside, Seaside actually has 3 different water jurisdictional boundaries. So parts of Seaside are within that water district, parts of Seaside are within a Seaside municipal water district, and parts of Seaside are within the Marina Coast Water District. In Marina Coast Water District, where they're not pulling water from the Carmel River, they're pulling water from the deep aquifer. I live in Marina. We just walked in and said we'd like an extra shower head in our bathroom, and they signed it, and we walked out with that extra shower head. So it's very different depending on where you're at. And yeah, and then to add on to the Fort Ord land, so the Fort Ord property here would be served by the Marina Coast Water District, which is separate than Cal-Am, which the rest of Delray Oaks is on. And there is a lawsuit settlement agreement that exists currently that put a limit of 6,160 additional housing units were allowable through this settlement on former Fort Ord property. So you have talked about the development happening in Marina and East Garrison. So they've been sort of, as those developments come online, they go in and check off, you know, here's another 200 units, here's another 400 units, here's another 300 units. There's question as to whether those 6160 units have all been fully have been taken up. So then at what point does someone challenge that lawsuit to reopen it and say, we think that Marina Coast Water does have more water to supply? It's one of the reasons why we have some of the county-owned property on the former corridor out at like Schoonover Park, where we have a lot of homeless services that are provided. We could add ADUs. Technically, we could add ADUs onto each one of those properties or convert the garages into studio affordable apartments. But we're under the understanding that because there are no more of those 6160 units available, we can't add housing on those locations because they're on the former corridor. So yes, there's water to be supplied there, and also there's, I think, some legal discussion that will end up taking place as to whether or not there actually is water. We call it paper water versus real water versus like waters for fighting. And I do think, I mean, the big picture though, I feel like coming from that photo that I had of my grandpa where it was like just battling about water, I feel like we are moving in a place where the public will is saying, we don't want to use water to restrict growth and development anymore. We acknowledge that we need more affordable housing. We acknowledge that we need water for economic development. And the question is, how do we get that water? What is the path to get us to that water? Not how do we prevent getting more water, which I think maybe had been the conversation previously. Yeah, Garrett.
Yeah.
What is the hold up, the another to the, publicly owned, Utah? I mean, we have to wait for Cal to sort of fold before we can look at that, is that?
I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that question, but I think that's the question that I'm asking, right? Right now there's Kellium is continuing down a path, and there's a lot of folks that are invested and, you know, committed to figuring out like Kellium is the best. Believe that Kellium is the path that's going to get us there. I'm looking at everything around it. I'm looking at the 20 conditions that the Coastal Commission laid out. I'm looking at, you know, the city of Marina and some of the social. I don't see the Kellium plant ever happening. I just don't see it happening.
But I guess you know, maybe don't know, when do we start looking at the public option?
I think we should talk about it. I think it's something that, like, under what reality what are the conditions that Marina would come back to the table? What are the conditions that would that allowed us to move forward with the regional water plant before it fell apart? You know, who needs to be a part of that conversation? Who leads that conversation? Which of our public agencies would be willing to take that on? Is Marina Coast Water prepared to lead on that conversation? There's a lot of elected officials who sit on each of these bodies who I think would need to be at the table. I think right now the path towards any of that is that the water district, the Monterey Regional Water District is moving forward with the eminent domain buyout of Kellium. So if they proceed with that, and is Kellium going to keep fighting? At what point does Kellium say, Developers saying, I bought this from someone else. I didn't agree to this whole thing. So there's these tensions that exist where, you know, how do you force a developer to do something that was promised 25 years ago when the profitability conditions for that developer have changed over 20 years? Do you just say wait another 10 years and maybe it will continue to change? I think a lot of the development that we've experienced for any kind of redevelopment project, it's only as good as how you draft that redevelopment agreement, how you draft that DDA with the developer, what kinds of criteria you put in that hold them accountable, or create bonds that, you know, if you don't deliver by this timeline, we get this money and it's going to allow us to go find someone else to do it. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. I mean, hopefully Delray Oaks learns all those lessons as you figure out how you're going to develop out your property. And, you know, you do have the timelines that are in place, and you do have the bonds that are in place, so that you don't end up in a situation where a developer says, well, I did the most profitable parts at the beginning and I'm out. Like, I'm going to leave you guys on the hook for whatever's left. Because that's part of the risk that we're walking with some of these negotiations.
And one of the things that I'll add, we will look for other resources to help clear those areas to the level that they need to be in order to build residential on there. It's kind of like I mentioned with South Boundary Road. We're going to try and find other ways to fund that upgrading of the road. But when we finally expend all those resources, then it becomes a discussion with the developer in terms of taking that on. You know, just like South Boundary Road, they need those utilities out there, so that becomes part of the discussion. But before we get to that point, we're going to expend every resource that we can, and, you know, look out there to see what we can find to have it cleared prior to that.
One more question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you remind what TAMC, what that stands for?
So TAMC is a transportation agency for Monterey County. And I don't know if it's a formal, like, is it JPA or like what the formal structure is, but it's
I'm not sure.
it's a JPA. So it's a JPA with a representative from every city in the county and all 5 supervisors who sit together, and we make decisions about regional transportation projects and funding and priorities. And then a lot of times we'll do the planning work and take our planning work and give it to like Caltrans and say, hey, Caltrans, here's a project that we need you to, we've done all the work, so now you just have to put the roundabouts in and do, like Highway 68 is not a county, it's a state road. Highway 101 south of Salinas, where we have some terrible, horrible, deadly accidents on a regular basis because we don't have appropriate left turn lanes for people. And we've had more fatalities in that little stretch of road. We've done a lot of the planning work, and we'll write and prioritize requests for state and federal appropriation funds so that the state can do the work for improvements.
So if in the future there should be housing on a corridor property, and as well as everything living out there, and have the utilities and have water to it. Would it be the Monterey Community Transit? Would it be working with the transit, or then if we wanted to try and have a really strong infrastructure for public transportation, so that we wouldn't have more cars, individuals with it, you know, in their cars driving into Monterey Trunk Corridor, if we have a really good transit system bringing people into work.
So that would be Monterey Salinas Transit, which is another public agency that we have appointees to. There's like literally, I don't know, 24 different boards and commissions that I sit on. It's a lot. And a lot of the public transit money comes from the state. We don't, you know, people paying their bus fare, that doesn't fund the bus system. We subsidize the bus system. So I think that's a question of priorities for the state and priorities for our region. Are we prepared to build out a sufficient network for public transit? Is that something that we want to be? I think we've kind of made a commitment to invest in that in some way with the bus surf line. If we make that commitment, then you build out the vision, and then you go out and get the federal and state dollars to help fund it. But we don't currently have a vision for how that's going to work. East Garrison, where we have we just added another 70 units of permanently affordable housing. We have very limited bus service at East Garrison. So it is something to think about, where we put housing, where do we have infrastructure. I think about my mom, right, who is getting older. We had some situation where she wasn't able to drive for a period of time, and we were trying to figure out how do we get her to where she needs to be. And we don't have a public transit system that was able to accommodate the needs that she had. And we're talking about independence. We're talking about so we're not there yet, but maybe we're headed there if that's what the public decides it wants to support.
Yeah, and I'm sure Monterey Salinas Transit will be part of that discussion. There's no question about it. And it's kind of nice. The CEO and general manager is a Delray Oaks resident. So
it helps, doesn't it?
That helps out, yeah.
Yeah. What time is it? So it's 7:45. We're like 15 or 6:45. We'll do like a couple more questions and
Sure.
try to get everyone out of here
Yeah.
before too late. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Councilman.
Thank you, Supervisor Rudowski, for visiting us in our home this evening. Very interesting points that you brought up that perhaps I could know a bit more about, but I haven't drilled down that. You brought up the number 6,160, and then the pre-established, approximately 25 years ago, statutes or limitations when that, well, I suppose that's part of my question. Is that about the time that number was set? And is it all development from then up to then, or is this just at the beginning of Port Orford Youth Authority, which coincidentally has been around the same time? But, and have we really come that close? I do not have a lot of knowledge concerning the lawsuit pending, but you're saying that some are contesting that we have already fulfilled that number, and some are saying, I mean, I'm just not seeing where we get that count. Of course, I'm looking at the map, and all they show us these days is the National Monument boundaries, of course, it extended further into Engine Road and all. So that would include East Garrison.
Yeah. Sea Haven, the Dunes.
Coral Park has at all, or Pasadena doesn't affect that. CSUMB, each dormitory does it. We obviously have done nothing thus far. So I'm just not seeing with that how that adds up to 6,000 units already. And then I'm wondering how the outcome of that potential lawsuit is going to affect. As you mentioned, yes, we just revised and just updated our fifth cycle housing elements, soon to be our sixth. So we have zoned, we have updated, we are state compliant. Wonderful, we're moving in the right direction. But if those numbers are already exceeded or being contested, I mean, is there enough for us to meet the RENA numbers?
Yeah.
Us and neighboring.
And the county too.
How realistic
Yeah.
is that?
So,
How do you see that coming?
so for the timeline, Gary, I don't know what the timeline of that settlement was. If you, 2018 was the 6160 settlement. So I don't know the timeline, the settlement of the timeline, but I'm sure others.
6160, I thought was the number that came from before that the people were all off and landmark and they agreed to keep the number that was already there. That's what I thought it was.
So more information there. Anyway, there is I don't have the details of how it came to be or who the parties are, but I know there is this 6160 number. Okay, thank you.
So the dispute is in the allotment, the disbursement of the entitlements, not actually.
So
So more to follow up there, and I'm sure we can figure out how to get you some more information about that. And the other piece that I think is relevant, the county is looking at where we're going to put housing as well. Like we have a huge number of RHNA housing that we need to put. One of the locations that we're looking at is the mouth of the Carmel Valley to put affordable units, right? That's a great spot. There's tons of resources there. It's a highly resourced community. But there's also a legal settlement in Carmel Valley that put a cap on the number of additional housing units that could be built in Carmel. So one of the questions that I have is, the state is now telling us you have to build housing. Does the state override these legal settlements that have been there in the past? There aren't clear answers to these questions. There isn't a clear answer to the Carmel Valley settlement agreement cap. There's a conversation between the county and the Carmel Valley, the group that made the settlement agreement there, to see, like, can we move the boundaries of where the cap is around so that we can get our units in. I don't know what conversations may or may not. I think it's the water district that now holds that. I would defer to the city and to the water management district for the details of that. But I guess there's likely to be legal engagement. There are those who really do feel strongly about maintaining that number. And so as with anything that we do when it comes to development or water or basically any kind of development on the Monterey County, there's a legal path that ends up playing out in parallel with what we want to achieve. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just add that, I mean, to kind of take it down to the nugget you're looking for, the discussion now is plan versus actual when it comes to that 6,100 max. So some folks look at it as, hey, you've met that point when you have planned projects like Yuri was talking about that get you to that level, or do you have actual houses, units that have been built? Do they count for that number, or does the plan number count for that number? I will just tell you that Marina Coast Water is looking at number of meters. So when you look at it from the people who are providing our water, they're below that 6,000, well below that 6,000.
By way of entitlement, is Delray Oaks, I think Delray Oaks first and foremost, not a big bias, but specifically Delray Oaks and our former forward land. Does our proportion of that 6160 entitled units meet and allow for our RHNA numbers?
Yes.
There may, with respect to the mayor, there may be differences of opinion on that.
Well,
point.
yeah, there could
and
be.
I say that as a representative of the county, where we're also having a discussion about the county has identified former Fort Ord property for our RHNA as well, as has the city of Monterey. And so one of the conversations happening at the county, and I'll just speak to the county, is how does that 6160 cap play out with what we're proposing? Is that an action, like, is that going to be a limiting factor? What is the state going to say when we submit this housing element? Is that going to be a reason that they don't approve us? Or is the state going to say, we're overriding this lawsuit to allow you to have, there's a number, all of the lawyers are weighing in. So I'll just say from the county's perspective, we don't feel, I would not say we're confident. I would say that we're exploring what that means. And also looking at alternative locations, should we need to identify them for our RHNA properties. And the city of Delray Oaks may have a different opinion.
Well, no, I mean, and it's absolutely lawsuits will most likely happen, and it'll be, I guess, resolved through that channel. But based upon what I'm hearing and what I just told you, the actual versus planned, and Marina Coast, who are our purveyors, their perspective on it, that's why I give the answer yes. But yeah, I could put an asterisk to it based on what Wendy was saying. There's a big chance it'll be litigated. So
for the county, we're also trying to identify, like, what other options do we have? Where do we have property to meet our RENA needs that isn't gonna end up litigated? Do we have, what are the limited other options? And sometimes there aren't. In some cases, you know, if you're talking about, you know, trying to get more housing in the county's District 5 Carmel Valley area, there isn't another option. We have to talk about a location that has a settlement agreement, and we have to talk about renegotiating that settlement agreement. Otherwise, we won't be able to add more housing in a community that really needs it. But when and where we have the ability to see, you know, we've got some property, the county, one of the county, I don't have the map up, but there's a triangle parcel of land just on the opposite. All of our 1,000 arena low-income houses on that little parcel of that little triangle property. But when you're talking about 1,000 units of low-income housing, you're talking about a ratio of 80% affordable market rate to pay for those 1,000. So really, you're talking were we really going to build 5,000 new units on this little corner triangle parcel on the corner of Reservation and Blanco? I don't know how reasonable that. Like that's building a city bigger than Delray Oaks for us to meet our RENA numbers on a location where there's no infrastructure nor services. Like adjacent to an airport. Like, I don't know that that's something the state's gonna be like, good idea. But we have to submit a plan. We have to submit something. So everyone is between a rock and a hard place right now. So Pebble Beach is part of the unincorporated county of Monterey. So they would be part of our 3,326 units.
But probably none of the very low. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, and I don't actually, that would be District 5. So I've been paying most of my attention to where we're gonna try to put our District 4 unit, but yeah. I mean, these are really good questions, and I think the state, you know, Carmel, where's Carmel on here? Carmel is supposed to add, Carmel's what, 1 square mile by 1 square mile? I know. And they have 349 units. I know. And they're saying where? They don't have a former Fort Ord property. So what does that look like? How do you do that? And I think there is a little bit, I mean, I think the state is serious about these numbers, but there's also a little bit of like, how do we take a step back? How do we take our glasses off and like think about this differently? Because that's what we're being partially asked to do. How do we? Yeah. And also we know that if we care about climate change, also we know that if we care about traffic impacts, also we know that if we care about limited resources, the energy utilization, the water utilization, the carbon greenhouse gas emissions of infill development are less than building out on previously undeveloped land. We know that. So there's, you know, but like, what does that mean for a community that already exists when you're trying to build, you know, on top of a community that exists? The infill development is always best. Going higher density is always best if we care about all these things. But the reality of that, that's a different conversation.
You're right.
Cleaning up water. Or the plumes.
The two of us heard a speaker at the AUW the other day who was talking about the rights of getting water locally. Okay? And she made the point that there's a very high rate of nitrates in the water of the old Fort Ord, and the Army will not clean it up. There are cancer pockets in communities living in that area, but the Army will only recognize Agent Orange who actually went to Vietnam. They will not accept any responsibility for others who might get cancer from something. But this nitrate level is high in the water. Anybody going to do anything about it?
That is beyond Delray Oaks.
So
That's big.
I will say,
Yeah.
like, we're well aware, and there are plumes, there are toxic plumes. I don't have an answer to the question, but I will just comment. We have a huge percentage of military residents here in our district. Our Military and Veterans Affairs program is well funded, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that every military veteran who's eligible for VA services, for military service assistance is signed up to receive those. I do find it interesting though. I lived for most of kindergarten and half of first grade on a military base where we didn't have access to potable water. And you brush your teeth, and I was 5, right? You brush your teeth, you had to use the bottled water. We had little buckets of, we had bottled water in the kitchen for cooking, for like you couldn't put the water in your mouth. But we bathed in that water. It was 110 degrees. We would fill the hose up with the little bathtub bucket thing in the backyard, and we'd sit in that bucket of hose water for hours every day. And I asked my mom that, I was like, Mom, why was the water non-potable? If it wasn't safe for us to brush our teeth with, how was it safe for me to sit in as a 5-year-old for hours, like literally hours every day? She was like, I don't know. I didn't even think to ask any questions. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's something I do think about more often than maybe most people do. It would be to address that issue would require the federal government to identify and decide to rectify harm that was done or is being done to people who were impacted outside of that formal military. But having said that, we do have, if you served in the military, if you have a family member that served, if you have a loved one that served in the military, and please do come to Military and Veterans Affairs. Let them look at your documents. Most people qualify. If you served at any point for any period of time, most folks can qualify for something. And then if something happens to you, your spouse can continue receiving benefits. So we do want to make sure. If you have a child, if my dad would have gone and signed up, I would have gone to college for free. Tuition waivers. I mean, incredible benefits that are available. So on that note, who knows what I saw in that water, but maybe it explains some things for some people. I don't know. But on that note, I will just say I want to thank you guys for coming out and spending some time with me tonight. I want to thank the mayor for being so available and accessible when we have issues that come up. I love serving my community. It is not always easy. We've had a couple of really rough board meetings. But I'm available, my staff is available. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at any time. Invite us to your events. If we're available, we'll be there. I've got my Frog Pond shirt that I'll wear. We're here to make sure that, that your needs are being represented.